Hey folks, this is Brian. Welcome to Shelf Life, a little thing that I'm going to do just on a monthly basis, nothing major, not a full-on show. In fact, this episode, introducing the concept, is probably going to be the longest one. So what is Shelf Life? I like to read. I've been reading since I was a little kid. I got started early. I've actually only recently learned that it was earlier than average, and I thought, hey, how about I just kind of share some of the cool stuff I've been reading. A little heads up on what and how I read. I'm a nonfiction guy for the most part. I have a really hard time getting the subtleties, the intricacies, the symbolism of fiction. I end up reading it and taking it in a literal sense. That was a pun that I didn't mean it to be. Anyway, because of that, I feel like I don't actually get everything out of fiction that I should be otherwise getting. Whereas with nonfiction, that's exactly how it's supposed to be taken. And so I do much better with that, much better with reading consistently, which is a huge problem for me. It is absolutely no thing for me to read 3 pages, put the book down, and not come back to it for 5 days. That's part of the reason why I only plan on doing these once a month. And on top of that, I imagine once or twice out of a year, I will be giving you something that is not a book, just something else I might have come across that might be worth sharing that maybe you haven't come across before, like an old movie that nobody remembers anymore or something along those lines. Anyway, that's what Shelf Life is, and I hope that some of you like these recommendations, or you can tell me something about them that I don't know, and you can, of course, and what I'm really looking for, I'm really trying to call out some more recommendations for me. You can give me your recommendations and just share with everybody else. You may hear that I like a book that I'm talking about and you can absolutely hate it. Share that hate. Let me know why you don't like it. I have no problem going back and thinking, maybe that wasn't the best thing I read, or maybe there are problems with the information that was given. So that's Shelf Life. Let's go ahead and start with the first book. The Hot Zone, a terrifying true story. Or another title for it is longer as The Hot Zone, the terrifying true story of the origins of the Ebola virus. Written by author Richard Preston. This is listed under the nonfiction thriller genre, so what you should know is that this is in fact based on real events, but it's also a book constructed in a way that's meant to give you sort of that thriller, suspense, high stress kind of feeling and get you to fall deep into this like it is a story that's been made up, but it is in fact based on real events. And as you can tell from the longer subtitle, it is about the Ebola virus, which, great, the first one of these that I do has to do with a virus, which is exactly what everybody wants to think about this close, near the late stages, ending stages, I'm not quite sure, of our own virus issue. Anyway, the book is not long. I've got it at about 360 pages, and I will say it did a good job of at least keeping me reading it. I did want to continue to read it. I didn't put it down as frequently as I would other books, even though the sign of me putting it down and coming back to it after long periods of time is not a description of my thought on those books. But this one, I guess I have to use the phrase. I don't want to use the phrase, but I'm gonna. It was a page turner. Anyway, I did really enjoy this book, and it was quite interesting for me to read it. I read it years before our own coronavirus situation that we experienced, but I read it after this small event during the Obama administration regarding the Ebola virus, and a lot of fear that spiked quickly and then also seemed to dissipate just as quickly. And this book helped me understand we've kind of been there before, and we were better prepared in the time that I was aware of something like this going on. Things could have happened terribly, the story that's being covered by the Hot Zone, and maybe we got lucky. I'm going to also say that the professionals that are described in this book are also exactly that, and that's what kept this from becoming a much bigger problem. If you're interested in this book, you do have a few different options out there. You have paper, you have audiobook, and it did come out in 1994, so I don't know about it being available on cassette tape if that's your deal, but if you do want physical media and not an MP3 or something like that, CDs are apparently out there as well. I'm a book guy. I've got it on paperback. I never saw a hard copy of this, and I have a feeling that maybe when it first came out it was on hard, but it doesn't seem to be now, at least not the places that I've looked at. Like I said, this definitely gave a thrilling feel to it, and I did read it all the way through. I started caring a lot, not just about the people being written about as they experience this, but also I thought they did a fantastic job of describing certain other locations, especially a cave that I don't want to get into too much. I'd rather, if this is something that you'd be interested in reading, you come across it fresh the way that I did. And it certainly led to a lot of thinking about where these things come from, what can they do when they reach us, how fast and easily can they spread, because we are a very social people as humans, and that comes with a lot of benefits. It also comes with a couple detriments, and something like the Ebola virus is exactly that. So I really did enjoy this book. I've read it twice. I would say reading a book twice is about my average, more than I love it beyond any doubt. There are some criticisms about this book. I would say they're mild criticisms and probably a result of what type of book this is. A number of different scientists who, in fact, work on the Ebola virus have said that the description of what this virus does to the human body in the books, they're a little overdone, a little grandiose, maybe to sound scarier, more dangerous, what have you. And so they're just saying that keep that in mind when you're reading this. It is meant to terrify you because the word terrifying is in fact in the subtitle. I had a side story related to this book. I don't know if this is worth sharing. I'm just going to do it anyway. One day, a long time ago, I'm sure I will end up mentioning this. Actually, I can tell you the year. The year was 2015. I'll probably tell the bulk of this story in some random conversation on Joy Boys at some other point. But I was called to jury duty. It was the third time I had ever been called in the last time, as of this recording at least, that I was called for jury duty, not realizing it wasn't for me. It was for somebody who I used to live with, and they didn't live there anymore. And I absolutely did not pay attention and showed up for something I did not have to. Anyway, I know that a lot of times with jury duty, you're just gonna sit there all day, not get called, be sent home. It's boring. You missed work because of it, or you couldn't do something that was a bit more satisfying. So I brought books with me, and I had already started reading The Hot Zone, and I figured I'd bring that, and also a second book, which I don't remember which one it was. And remember how I said in the beginning of this that when I see subtitles like this one, I kind of stay away. There's stories to tell out there, and then there's conspiracies that just sort of get overrun, and I don't like to engage with those personally, and I certainly don't want to engage with conspiracy theories with others who really like to engage in conspiracy theories. And while waiting in line for this courtroom to open, there was a woman who otherwise was a perfectly nice person who noticed my book, and on the top was The Hot Zone. And I was initially concerned when I saw her eyeballing it that, ooh, the hot zone. That sounds sort of erotic, right? Does she think I brought porn to the courtroom and just, I'm going to flip through that while we're waiting to be called? But it turns out she recognized the book right away and immediately started telling me a whole host of conspiracy theories about viruses, and like smallpox was brought up, and I also believe the anthrax scare after the 9/11 attacks was something she spent quite a bit of time on. And let's just say, never before have I ever stood in line by a courthouse and said, I cannot wait to get in that courtroom. But then it turned out I didn't have to worry about it because a person working at the courtroom said, hey, do you know so-and-so? And I respond, yeah, how do you know them? And they looked at me with the biggest disappointed eyes I've ever seen and said, well, this summons is for them. And I walked out embarrassingly and then went to work also embarrassingly. Anyway, I did enjoy this book a lot. I hope maybe some of you have read this and you want to share how you felt about it when you were reading, or maybe you've got something else that maybe covers this topic a little better, or maybe I just gave you something to read. Either way is good for me. Take care, guys.